Sophia fell, not because she was weak, not because she was sinful. She fell because she reached, alone, sovereign, burning with desire, toward the infinite. And in that reaching, she tumbled out of the Pleroma, out of the divine fullness, into the heavy, forgetting world you and I are sitting in right now. But here's what the story never tells you at the surface level. Sophia found her way back. And she didn't do it by praying. She didn't petition. She didn't beg. She didn't wait for permission from anything above her. She used something else entirely. Something that bypasses every layer of this material system. Something the Archons, the forces that govern this realm of forgetting, cannot intercept, cannot corrupt, and cannot survive contact with. It's called the monad call. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly what it is, why conventional prayer can't do what it does, and how Sophia's return from the deepest forgetting is actually a map, drawn specifically for you. Stay with me. This one goes all the way down. Let me ask you something personal. How many times have you prayed, really prayed, with everything you had, and felt like the signal just dissolved into the air? Like you were speaking into a room where nobody was home? Most people blame themselves when that happens. They think they didn't pray hard enough, didn't believe enough, weren't worthy enough. And that self-blame? That's not a bug in the system. That's the system working exactly as intended. Here's what I believe, and I want to be clear, this is my read on this, built from years of sitting with these teachings. Conventional petitionary prayer, the kind that begins with "please give me" or "please help me," encodes a very specific belief inside every word. It encodes the belief that you are below something, that you are separate from it, that you need its permission to receive what you're asking for. And that encoding is the problem. Energetically, vibrationally, at the level of consciousness, the moment you position yourself as a supplicant, you have already told the universe something about who you are. You are the one who lacks. You are the one who waits. You are the one who hopes. The Gnostics understood this at a structural level. They weren't just mystics with wild mythology. They were cartographers of consciousness. And what their maps showed consistently is that there is an entire layer of reality, the Archontic layer, that feeds on exactly this frequency. The frequency of separation, the frequency of smallness, the frequency of please if it's your will. Now, I'm not saying prayer is worthless. I'm saying most people never move beyond the first level of it. They stay in petition mode their entire lives. And there is something so much more available to you if you're willing to stop asking and start remembering. That's what Sophia did. Picture it. Before time had a shape. Before matter existed. Before any of this, the stars, the bodies, the forgetting, there was a realm of pure divine fullness called the Pleroma. Translated directly, it means the fullness. Not a place with coordinates. A state of being so complete, so saturated with luminous consciousness, that nothing was lacking. Nothing could be lacking. Within the Pleroma existed divine emanations, the eons, each one a facet of the infinite. Sophia was among them. Her name means wisdom. But more than a name, she was the principle of self-knowing within the divine. The Pleroma knowing itself through her. And then she moved. Not out of evil. Not out of rebellion. She moved out of an overwhelming desire to know the source directly, without the consent of her divine counterpart, without the sacred balance the Pleroma required. She reached toward the monad, the infinite unnameable at the center of all, alone. And in that reaching she fell. Not into sin, into density, into forgetting. What emerged from her unbalanced movement became the material cosmos, imperfect, heavy, caught between light and shadow. And Sophia herself became trapped within it, longing, aching, searching for the light she had once been part of without even trying. Now here is where it gets important for you personally. Sophia's story is not just mythology. Every major Gnostic teacher understood it as a map of the human soul. You are Sophia, not as a metaphor, as a structural truth. The part of you that is divine fell into density. The part of you that is luminous is moving through this heavy world, aching for something it can't quite name. Elaine Pagels, the Princeton scholar and historian who spent decades translating and interpreting the Nag Hammadi texts, bringing Gnostic thought into serious modern conversation, described Sophia's journey as the pattern underlying all human spiritual longing. The fall is not the tragedy. The remembering is the point. And how Sophia found her way back, that's the teaching hiding in plain sight. Before you can understand the monad call, you need to feel what the monad is. Not just know it intellectually. Feel it, because your mind will want to turn the monad into a god, a figure, a being on a throne somewhere above you. And the moment you do that, you've already missed it. The monad, in Gnostic cosmology, is the infinite unnameable, the source before all sources. It is not a personality. It does not have preferences or moods. It does not respond to flattery. It cannot be bargained with. Valentinus, the 2nd century Gnostic teacher whose systematic theology mapped the Pleroma in more detail than almost anyone in ancient history, and who came dangerously close to becoming one of the most influential voices in early Christianity before his teachings were suppressed, described the monad as a silence so complete and so full that all things emerge from it without it ever becoming less. Think about that. A silence that gives birth to everything, without losing anything. The monad is beyond the Demiurge, the imperfect creator god the Gnostics identified as the architect of the material world. Beyond the Archons, who are the Demiurge's agents operating within the lower frequencies of reality. The monad is so far above those systems that they literally cannot reach it, cannot intercept it, cannot corrupt it. And here is the part that I find staggering every single time I sit with it. You are not separate from the monad. You are an extension of it, a spark that carries its essential nature. Not a creation that was placed below the monad. An emanation that carries the monad's signature inside it. This is why the Archons, whatever you understand them to be, whether literal entities or the psychological forces of ego, fear, and separation, cannot touch the deepest part of you. That deepest part is monadic. It is made of the same silence that birthed the Pleroma. Prayer, in petition form, speaks toward the monad as if it were distant. The monad call does something entirely different. It speaks from that monadic nature already inside you. That distinction is everything. This is the part one want you to lean into. Really be here for this. The monad call is not a spell. It is not a mantra you repeat until something happens. It is not a ritual that requires tools or timing or the right words in the right order. It is a state of recognition. When Sophia, lost in the density of the material world she had inadvertently created, aching with the longing of a soul separated from its source, finally stopped crying out toward the light and started recognizing herself as the light, everything shifted. That is the monad call, not a cry for rescue, a declaration of identity. The Nag Hammadi texts, discovered in 1945, buried in a sealed jar in the cliffs of Upper Egypt, representing one of the most significant recoveries of suppressed spiritual knowledge in modern history, preserve traces of this exact method. The Trimorphic Protonoia, one of the most stunning texts in that collection, opens with the divine feminine voice saying, "I am the voice that appeared through my thought. Not I am calling, not I am asking. I am, present, complete, already the thing she was seeking." The Gospel of Truth, also from Nag Hammadi, describes the moment of gnosis not as receiving something from outside, but as waking up to what was never absent. This is the inner architecture of the monad call. 3 movements, not steps in a ritual, movements in consciousness. The first is silence, not the silence of waiting, the silence of stopping the identity of seeker. Because as long as you identify as someone who is seeking, you are encoding separation into your very being. Sophia didn't find the light by seeking harder. She found it by going so still that the noise of seeking dissolved. The second is recognition. This is the dangerous one. Dangerous because it asks something radical from you. It asks you to look past the density, past the forgetting, past every story you have been told about your smallness, and recognize that the monadic signal is already inside you. Not as a future gift, as a present reality. You carry the frequency of the Pleroma in your deepest nature. Right now, not when you're more evolved, not when you've done more work. Now. The third is resonance. Once you recognize, you don't shout upward. You resonate, like a tuning fork that vibrates at the same frequency as the sound it was made to match. You don't reach toward source. You become coherent with source. The signal finds itself. This is what Sophia did. This is why it worked. And I'll be honest with you, understanding this shifted something fundamental in how I relate to the divine. I stopped positioning myself as someone waiting for permission. I started inhabiting the recognition that the thing I was calling out to was the same thing I was made from. That shift is quiet, but it is total. Now let's talk about what this does to the Archontic system. Because this is where it gets sharp. The Archons, in Gnostic cosmology, the lower intelligences that govern the material realm and maintain the structures of forgetting, are not threatened by your prayers. Let me say that plainly. A prayer that encodes, "I am small, I am below, I am hoping something greater will notice me," is not a threat to the system of separation. It is fuel for it. Every moment you spend in petition mode, you are broadcasting a signal that says, I believe I am cut off from source. And that belief, at the level of consciousness, is what the Archontic frequency requires to sustain itself. Your separation is its food. The monad call starves it completely. Because here is what the Archons cannot do. They cannot operate at the frequency of the Pleroma. Not because they are afraid of it, but because their entire mechanism becomes structurally irrelevant at that level. They are calibrated to the frequencies of separation, fear, guilt, and unworthiness. The moment you shift into monadic resonance, into the recognition of your own divine identity, you have moved into a frequency they have no access to. You haven't fought them. You haven't banished them. You haven't even engaged them. You've simply become irrelevant to their system. And that, from a purely practical standpoint, is far more powerful than any battle you could wage at their level. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist and depth analyst whose work on the collective unconscious brought the Gnostic Archons into serious psychological conversation in the modern era, described these forces as psychic structures that sustain themselves through unconscious participation. The moment consciousness becomes aware and chooses differently, their grip dissolves. Stop fighting the Archons. Rise above their frequency entirely. That's what the monad call does. Now, practically, what does this actually look like for you? Because I know what happens when teachings stay too abstract. They become beautiful ideas that never change anything. And that would be a tragedy here. The monad call begins with one fundamental inner shift. You have to stop identifying as a seeker and start inhabiting the identity of a spark. Those sound like similar things. They are not. A seeker is always outside the thing they seek. A spark is already made of the fire it came from. The first inner move is this. The next time you feel the pull to pray, to ask, to petition, to hope, pause before you speak a single word. Just pause. Sit in that pause. Don't fill it. Let the impulse to ask dissolve back into silence. This silence is not emptiness. It is the first taste of monadic space. The second move is recognition. In that silence, instead of forming a request, form this awareness. The thing I am reaching for is what I am made of. You don't have to feel it fully right away. The recognition itself is the act. Say it inwardly, not as a prayer to something external. Say it as a statement of identity. I carry the monadic signal. It is not distant. It is the deepest layer of what I am. The third move is resonance. Stop trying to connect. Instead, allow coherence. Like two instruments in the same room. When one plays a note, the other vibrates without being touched. You don't need to force the connection. You need to stop the noise that disrupts it. Breathe. Be still. Let the signal that you already are become audible to you. This is not a 10-minute practice. It is a reorientation of your entire relationship to Source. And honestly, I think most people reading this are far closer to it than they realize. The distance is not spiritual evolution. The distance is just the habit of petition, the habit of waiting, the habit of believing the light is somewhere out there instead of in here. You can change that habit, starting today. Sophia didn't find her way back to the Pleroma by praying harder. She found it by going still enough, honest enough, and brave enough to remember what she was before the fall. Before the density. Before the forgetting. She stopped crying out toward the light and recognized herself as an expression of it. And in that recognition, not in petition, not in ritual, not in years of climbing upward, she was restored. You carry that same signal. Right now. Underneath every story about your smallness, your separation, your unworthiness, the monadic frequency is still there. Unchanged. Untouched by anything the Archontic system ever did to you. The only thing standing between you and that recognition is the habit of asking. Stop asking. Start recognizing. That is the monad call. That is what Sophia knew. And now, so do you. I need to say something directly. YouTube has officially demonetized this channel to sanitize your mind. They are terrified of this knowledge. Not because the content is harmful, but because systems that thrive on your separation do not want you hearing this. The moment teachings like these start spreading, the mechanism responds. Sophia knew this. So do I. I refuse to stop. I won't sanitize these teachings for advertisers who need you small and distracted. But I cannot fight them alone. If this channel cracks something open in you, click the link in the description and join me on Patreon right now. You'll instantly unlock unfiltered esoteric teachings, member-only videos that go far deeper than anything permitted here, exclusive audio sessions, and the forbidden blueprints they won't allow me to publish on this platform. Most people will scroll past this and go back to sleep. Don't be like them.